Play ball! Welcome to Ryan Waters Sports Drive.
Hi, this is Scott Richmond of the Toronto Blue Jays. You're listening to Ryan Waters.
Hey, this is Dante Marsh, your all-star cornerback from the BC Lions, and you're listening to Ryan Waters.
This is Rob Johnson, UBC Okanagan Director of Athletics and Recreation, and you're listening to the Ryan Waters Sports Drive.
Now, here's your host, Ryan Waters.
Welcome back to the return of the Sports Drive. Now, when choosing my first guest for the return of the show, no way did I ever think it would be this guy. But the Okanagan Sun decided to make a coaching change heading into the bye week, and it's somewhat surprising as they introduce a familiar face. Jay Christensen takes over the offensive coordinator position. You might remember that Jay stepped away from the head coaching role following the 2008 season, but he's back, and he joins us on the on-air hotline. Jay, first of all, welcome back.
Thanks, Ryan. It's, a bit of a surprise and a bit of a shock, but it's certainly good to be back.
Well, how did it come about? I mean, were you even thinking about returning to the club this year or in the future, or did they come to you?
I was certainly not thinking of coming back this year. I specifically stayed, on the board of the BCFC and on some committees with the football team just to keep my foot in the door and, keep those relationships alive and obviously support the team because I love it. And, this year with the circumstances that unfolded, at the end of last week, and I think they felt obviously the club felt a decision had to be made, but I don't know if they, had a plan B once they'd done that. And really what happened is after a couple of days of practice, one of the offensive coaches approached me and said, if we can run it through the brass, are you interested in coming back? And, I obviously had to talk to my wife about it and decide whether, it was something I wanted to do at this point. And, everything just aligned. And I said, yeah, I'd be interested if you guys are. And, really that was it. It snowballed after that.
So you say you were at practice. Have you been around this club at all this year other than that practice?
No, not really. Like I said, I wanted to stay involved, but I didn't want to, overshadow anything that was happening with the team the last number of years. So, really just admired it at afar. I was kind of going through the list of players, offensive players when I come back on Tuesday, and I think there's only 3 or 4 that that played when I last coached. So it's going to be a clean slate for me. It's exciting in that fact that I'm going to come in with no preconceived notions of what they've done or anything, and just like I say, try to be a little bit more consistent in the offense and go forward.
Well, will you take the plays that were already in place, or do you have a new playbook that you're bringing in? How's that going to work? Because you're halfway through the season.
Actually, you know what? I reviewed the playbook, and I mean, there's been a few changes that I will change back, no question, just because it's my style and the way I like to see things done. But, as far as, the bulk of the playbook's going to stay the same. There have been a few changes just in what plays are called, so not the actual construct of the play, but they use different terminology. So it's going to be a bit of a learning curve for me. I'll probably revert at times back to calling it the old way, and the players are going to look at me like I'm daft. But ultimately, there's not going to be a whole lot of changes in plays. Like I say, I'm going to certainly tweak how some plays are run, and really it's just going to be, my goal, is no other than just to make our offense more consistent.
Yeah. You mentioned run. Of course, that's been the issue. This team has not been able to run the football, despite a very good offensive line. You like to pass, or at least when you're the head coach, you had Derek Mann and you had a bunch of receivers. Matt Sherwater comes to mind. You like to pass the ball. Will you continue to pass the ball, or will you work in a little more and a lot more running plays?
You know what? I that's kind of a two-fold answer. Number one, it is the Canadian Football League, and it's a passing type of league. Sure. So I'm going to come in and, like I say, do what I think is right to make this team or make this offense more consistent. And not really, I'm not going to commit and say I'm going to run the ball,
right.
Because then you become one-dimensional, and it's easy to stop that too. So I'll continue to do what I think is, going to make the team successful. But saying that, my philosophy has always been you have to be balanced to be successful, not only in this league, but, once, if we're fortunate enough to get out of province, and you start playing it in inclement weather, you have to be able to move the ball on the ground. So all I will say is we'll be able to do both, and what percentages, that comes out in the game, we'll see.
You haven't been around practice. Have you been to the games? Have you seen this team in action, in live action?
Actually, it's funny. No, one of the things when I did stop coaching that my family decided they wanted to do was do some camping. So it just turns out that the 2 home games this year fallen on weekends that we've been away camping. So, I have a great relationship, obviously, with the coaches that are on the football team, and we'll chat with them 3 or 4 times a week, just on, just as a fan, to keep interested and find out what's going on. And that's really kind of been the extent of the following the football team. The upside is the position coaches that remain are all very, very strong. Most of them will know my system from, and what I like from years gone by, and are going to be, obviously valuable resources because, they've already evaluated the players. They know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and I'll just be relying on them in the, in the short term to get me up to speed.
Well, what's next then? Do you look at game film, or do you just meet the team and start on Tuesday?
Well, as far as what's happened, I'm not going to worry about that at all. I'm not going to go back necessarily and look at any of the game film right now.
Right.
Once we start repeating, playing, I guess in a couple of weeks, West Shore, and at the final game of the year against Nanaimo, I'll go back and look at the games that they played. But in the interim, my concern is now Chilliwack here a week from now, and start watching some of that film. But the biggest thing for me, the first couple of nights of practice is just evaluating, through the assistant coaches, the talent that we have, trying to find out what their strength or weakness is. Like I say, maybe that game, depending on what I see when I get on the field, go back to, a little bit more basic stuff, as far as the Chilliwack game, and just worry more about us. I liken it back to an old quote that I've always used in football from Sun Tzu that said, the weak must prepare against its enemy, the strong makes its enemy prepare against them. So my philosophy is just, let's get us as strong as we can and not worry too much over the next week or two about who we're playing.
My last question, and maybe the most important one, is do you know where your orange shirt and shoes are?
I've already dug out the box, and it's pretty substantial, so I've just doubled my wardrobe again.
Jay Christensen joins us on the on-air hotline as the Sun name him the new offensive coordinator heading into the second half of the BCFC season. Jay and the Sun will host the Chilliwack Huskers on Sunday, September 11th at the Apple Bowl in the first afternoon affair at a 2 p.m. start. For more details, check out OkanaganSun.ca. All right, coming up in the next segment, we are going to stick with football as Luke, our resident fantasy football freak, will join us. The NFL will kick off their regular season coming up on Thursday. Luke will give us a breakdown on who you should select if you're heading into a draft, fantasy style. That's coming up. Hang on The Drive.
Your local sports authority is the Ryan Waters Sports Drive.